Hello, hippo lovers.
Hello.
Hey, Viper.
I think I'm the oldest one in this call, and I seem to have like double the hair of you guys combined. Just casually saying, of course.
Especially at the top, it's getting thin.
Oof, yeah, the top is always that's
That's
always
still more solid.
I'm not going to show that part of my head, but over here,
That's you call us out and you don't show.
Yeah.
That's,
it's cheating. I mean, well, what you see is what you get. What you see is what you get. That's what I'm going to say about that.
Especially NHC 5 production. We had like one cam behind the couch, and at the end of the day, they always filmed that, and it was like, holy moly! Like I was reflecting sunlight.
All right, hello there, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Majmora.
and I am happy hippo lover.
And this is episode 33 of The Town Center, a podcast dedicated to all things Age of Empires. In today's show, the tournament calendar for the season 2025-26 has just been released a few days ago, so it's time to have a conversation about it. Then the frantic pace of the Age of Empires 2 professional seed continues. We're recording this on Monday. Yesterday was the final of the Cartographers 2, and today is the official start of the Medieval Masters. Joining us today to discuss all this and more is the man, the myth, the legend, Nili. Thank you so much, Nili, for taking the time to be here, and welcome back to the Town Center.
Glad to be here. Always a pleasure.
If you enjoy the work we're doing here, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you prefer to listen to us on Spotify, make sure to rate us 5 stars. Nili, we're basically coming full circle with you, bro. The very first episode was with you.
Is this the last one?
Well, today we're coming for soccer. Hopefully this is not the last episode. Hopefully.
I think Nili is the word that is said the most in any Age of Empires game out vocally.
Well, then Scout, probably.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, with the GL team, that's definitely correct. That's definitely accurate.
Dude, it's spreading. Like I had a pathing issue. Like there was a pathing issue for one of my opponents in Rage Forest, and it was full caps lock to everyone. Nili. So it's everyone is doing it.
Nili is always present. Even when he's not present, he's present. That's how much of a role he plays in our scene. All right, listen up, Nili. We want to start by talking about the calendar. You've just released the calendar. When was it? Almost a week ago, not quite 1 week ago. And I'm actually wondering, is this like 80%, 90% of your work for Microsoft to have a calendar complete with all the confirmations, all the prize pools, all the settings, or is there like a lot more on the site on top of that?
Well, it was most of my week for the last 6 weeks, right? Basically. So what is happening is I talk to a lot of big people, like month ahead, right? People are interested in hosting tournaments, big companies sometimes. And then there's also, in addition to that, obviously our big community, right? I gave them the deadline 1st of May. So everyone applied and I got endless amount of submissions, right? I also, like, this is an Age of Empires 2 podcast, but I'm also responsible for 1, 3, 4, and AOM, right? So all of them are sending me stuff. I get my budget, and now it's decision time, right? This time, for example, and I'm allowed to share this, we roughly got 3 times the submission compared to what my budget is. So going into the situation, 1st of May deadline, I knew, okay, 66% of the people will be really angry that they don't get the tournament, that they don't get enough time, that they, even if they get the tournament, they don't get the budget that they wanted for, let's say, production or for the prize pool or something. And now it's the tricky stuff, right? Where I basically have to kind of judge, okay, which of those tournaments are best for the calendar, which give us, like, obviously our criteria, right? Watch hours peak, keeping people happy, showing respect to people that invest a lot into the scene, maybe some diversity in there. And yeah, that's tricky. And then I basically have like weekly meetings with the big people. For example, we now have Onimaru, and they obviously are very inexperienced with tournaments, right? So that's a weekly meeting trying to tell them, okay, can we get an idea of the location? Are you sure that this money is enough for production and travel and stuff? Let's try to research that. Let's talk to casters. Do they want to be there? Then I talk to casters. Do you actually want to be there? And like, which tournaments are going there? And that's a lot of coordination that basically took up my last full 6 weeks, or maybe even 7 weeks. And now we have the product there.
Mm-hmm. That means you can go on vacation now? You're done for the year.
Emotionally, I should. Yeah. Yeah, but it will be slower now. Yeah.
You're talking about that you're responsible for all games combined, essentially, right? And you have a budget.
Yeah.
Is there a designated budget for different games, or is everyone under the same umbrella of the whole budget?
Not necessarily, right? I talk basically with business lead, Will from World's Edge, and that's a bit of like an idea. Okay, how much do we want to put in there? Because, for example, AoE 4 is not producing as good numbers as AoE 2, but if they had a growing esports scene, that could help the game more than AoE 2, right?
Yeah.
Now, Age of Mythology, that's also interesting. Like, some more eyes on it would be good, but viewer numbers are really underwhelming right now, right? And that's also a tricky decision. There's not a clear cut, like 50% are going into AoE 2 or whatever. But yeah, I have a rough idea of how much I want to put in there.
So you said before that we had 3 times the available budget. So you had, if you were to grant all the sponsorship that people were asking you, you would be spending 3 times the budget that was given to you. I don't expect you to reveal what the budget was, but can you say how many applications there were in total?
I think I got applications from 65 different people.
What the 65?
And some of them are sending in multiple ones. For example, like one person or like one organization or person sent in 6 different tournament applications.
Right.
So that's a lot. Yeah. And
I would never have imagined that much.
And that's excluding like even tinier ones that I could, like 65 were actively like investigated that I put in my list at potentially getting sponsorship, right? There are some people like, oh, I have a 150 euro tournament. Let's double it and it will be twice the viewer numbers, right? Those I'm not listing in those. Maybe including those, we get up to like 80, 90, something in that ballpark. But 65, like actually like worth investigating requests, yeah.
That's crazy.
None of those smaller ones like are getting any support, right? Everything that's listed on the calendar that's it. There's nothing like you're doubling that 150 euro to any small event.
The thing is, if we sponsor something, there's so much paperwork going into it with people that have a way higher hourly than I do.
Yeah.
And like getting the contract, which is like just to read through this, it would take more than the 150 euros. So like typically our minimum sponsorship in the past was around like 5K. We did some small, like, I think there was like a Switzerland that got 1,000 once or something like, but typically we're aiming to support like $5,000 and above.
So I believe you accepted like, was it like 10 tournaments that you were sponsoring? Is that the total?
I think it's 19 in total, like overall games.
Oh, okay, yeah, right.
But like AoE 2 has like
nobody
10,
cares about
like
that. Like, people care about it.
Well, that's my job, right?
No, fair, absolutely. So you had to turn down a lot of people. Does that feel difficult to you, or is part of the job?
Oh yeah. That's and especially difficult because people often, and it's very easy, and I understand that, confuse Nili, the World's Edge person, and Nili, the private person, right? Even with like good friends and caster colleagues, and we had a lot of calls and a lot of fights, and then there's a lot of pointing, like finger pointing, like, oh, look at this tournament, I'm doing such a better job than this, and like what are you doing, like what happened to us? And I'm like, yeah, this
I thought you were friends.
Like, with all due respect, it's
and then something really bad is said after that. Everything bad starts with all due respect.
Just add no offense at the end.
Then it's all good. Well, what do people say? Everything that comes after a but doesn't, or everything that comes before a but. No, what was it?
Before a but doesn't matter.
Before a but doesn't matter. Yeah, that's it. Okay, so I was on vacation the last 2 weeks, Nili, so usually I'd be more prepared and I'd have the numbers here. Can you reveal, in terms of total money given, sponsorship given, can we reveal if this year is roughly on par with last year's? Is it more? Is it less?
I think there are some theories, especially on Reddit, someone did the math. Like, I don't think we are saying that directly.
Okay, fair enough.
It feels like it's in the ballpark, though, based on like first
impressions. It feels like a full calendar and comparable to the years before, yeah.
What it feels to me is that when Red Bull is here, we have 150 more, and when Red Bull is not here, you don't have it. That's basically it. Okay, so you said before that World's Edge, and you said in a post as well on Reddit, I've seen it, that World's Edge does help with production costs. I was not aware of that. I thought all of that was left up to the hosts. So is that something that has been introduced newly?
It depends on the tournaments, right? And for example, in my old Nili apartment cups, I was very transparent here. I got 100,000, 50,000 went into the prize plan. We're trying to increase the rest now, right? So that basically implied they gave me 50,000 extra for stuff. There are some tournaments that we only support the prize pool. Some people only ask for the prize pool, right? There are some tournaments that have very little production costs of like $500, like one admin for online tournaments, and they are raising that on their own. And some others, it's really tough to get there, right? And we had famously the Garrison struggling a lot. I struggled a lot in the past, and other offline tournaments often run with a big deficit in the end if production costs aren't at least covered partly.
I mean, when I did Cartographers last year, I essentially said like ideal world 10, 15, 20,000 for prize pool, and I was allowed 15,000. And then I also requested on top of that, is there a chance I could get another like 1,000, 2,000 to support admin work? And they were kind enough to give that. So I imagine that's the same way. Oh, Nili had like an expression.
What was that face?
How dare they?
What was that face?
I didn't really remember if
you were not. It was you were not the one I was talking with back then. So
Cartographers.
When I did the Cartographers
first, he means the first.
The first one.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. When I did it, I'm not allowed to do it anymore. just say.
Hey, what was Orion one of the guys you had a fight with? What? I cannot play in my own tournament?
Can we keep that behind closed doors, please? This is not for public.
I'll take that as a yes, as a massive yes. That's funny. Okay, Nili, one thing that stands out to me in this term, I mean, I don't think we have a value for Mem's tournament, and I guess that's his decision, and I'm not going to try to pry the value out of you. But one thing that stands out to me from all the tournaments that have been announced for this season, TTL gets $100,000, which is a lot more than it had last year, for example. So is that you recognizing or having the feeling that this is a especially important tournament for Age of Empires 2? Is that you seeing that the tournament is being organized by T90 and he has the potential, to reach the highest amount of audience? What's the calculation there?
In my ideal world, I'd like to give the calendar a lot of structure. And I'd like to have a winter season, 5 weeks, a summer season, 5 weeks, $50,000 each, or ideally at one point, maybe more, right? But that's that everyone knows, okay, this is happening, other tournaments are happening in between. Big problems with that were 5 weeks is simply too short, 40-90 in the admins. I think you can maybe squeeze it in, but it's rushed, and I see like you have to feel comfortable, and then it's like it kind of ends before it started, and it doesn't really get the league feeling. So I see that. Then the qualification system is kind of tricky, right? If you have like silver before, also if you squeeze it into 5 weeks, gold and platinum are overlapping so much more. And it also comes down a bit to fatigue, right? If you have like TTL ending and you're kind of announcing, okay, the next one is coming pretty soon, that is tricky in between. Also, the admins basically need to be available more because you need to prepare before, you need to prepare a bit after. And also, it's a lot around T90 himself, right? It's tough to motivate yourself like twice a year to be there 6 weeks compared to once. And one of the major factors is also how do we structure LAN tournaments around that, right? Because you don't want like the 2 weeks before TTL to have a LAN. You don't really want to have the 2 weeks after TTL. So like
to travel, all that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and suddenly you're blocking 9 weeks twice a year. So it was very clear also based on player feedback, maybe players council, something we talk about later, that they wanted one season rather. And therefore it felt very natural to everyone except my idea that I had like a year ago, that 1 year, one big season and give it a lot of time and a lot of money was the best option.
Okay, so what I'm hearing for you is why we only have one season, but I was wondering, why is it 100,000 in total? If I'm watching things a little bit objectively, I see that last TTL only, and I'll say only, had 30,000 viewers, and you have just spoken about how important it is, all the metrics and all of that. So this 100,000 is you recognizing that T90 is just the biggest content creator, and you're sure that if he puts all his weight, all his promotion, that justifies the $100,000, or why just a big discrepancy? Why this huge gap from...
Well, we basically agreed on 2 seasons with 50,000 each. And now we're just combining that into one season with 100,000. So basically, that was the allocated money for it, anyways. So there was no change for us. And yeah, viewer peak, was it only 30,000? Maybe. But watch hours are really good, obviously, right? It's 5 times a week, really high viewer numbers on a lot of channels. And YouTube is getting flooded as well. So that is a lot of content. And like lots of people are watching Age of Empires during that time.
With that number in mind, there used to be this thing where I feel there was a cap for creators of like how much they would get a year from Microsoft at one point. I think that was below 100K, wasn't it? So now it's like
at 100,000, or you need to sign a special contract, right?
Okay.
That was like we had like that's just for us easier to have the 100,000 cap. That's a bit more fluid now and was broken like years ago as well.
But there was no intention there, like to hard cut. No one can get more than this to keep it fair or anything like that. It was just like convenience.
Not necessarily. Yeah, that was a special contract thing. Also, TTL kind of needs a bigger price pool because with T90's idea on how many people he wants to pay, right? This time he pays 72 people plus a bit of Bronze League. So let's assume like 78 people, something like that, or let's call it roughly 80 people are getting paid. That's tough to do with like 20K.
Right. And I guess you also recognize the value of having a tournament like this that awards so many people a prize money. It gives them a little bit of motivation. And of course, on top of that, you have T90. That's probably the biggest tournament host we have, apart from Red Bull, maybe. Another thing that stands out to me, Nili, is that we have no team game tournaments for the next season. Rage Forest, did they not pitch you anything whatsoever? Or you just didn't want to?
Williams retired, no?
Williams retired, unfortunately, but they have worthy successors. I think it's Sensar, Menunez, and there's the third one.
I think Somero is involved, no?
Is it Somero, Sensar, and Menunez?
Could be wrong.
So it takes 3 people to replace Williams. That's how important it was. Yeah, Nili, if you don't mind talking about it.
I felt like it had so much of a community feel tournament and lacked a lot of professionalism and a lot of talks. And I didn't see how, if Williams, who was the face, would get replaced, that they could really provide what we would expect from other tournaments. This was a tricky thing. And to me, it feels more like this is a tournament that should be kept in the hands of the community, rather, I feel. It was an ugly one because like it got sponsorship, right? And now we're taking it away basically. And I hope it still happens. And like other tournaments with non-World's Edge sponsored happened as well. It didn't feel great, but I think it goes into the direction that we are going for. Like metrics were simply not there as well.
Were there a lot of team game tournament applications?
There were 3 in total.
Only 3? Wow.
Yeah. That's surprising.
And just like, I don't know what numbers were yesterday evening for Cartographers.
20,000 total. You mean total? Peak was 20,000. I don't know about hours watching all that. 20,000.
What was Cartographers 1?
26.
Yes.
That's. I mean, it was in your channel, right? It was streamed in your channel.
True,
I think that plays a big part. I'd assume at least.
I also think T90 didn't cover it yesterday, right? For example, so.
Okay, but let's exclude T90. What viewer numbers do we think we could have gotten if it was a Doubt Hera final? Certainly more than 20,000, right? If it was a 1v1 tournament, for example.
For the first one, you mean?
No. If it was Doubt versus Hera, it just replaced Cartographers with the 1v1 tournament.
Can you at least put a realistic scenario if you want to have a hypothetical? Nili, come on.
But,
it's hard to picture that scenario.
It's tricky, right? So right now it feels like, okay, if we do team game tournaments, it's more for the community.
Yeah.
And like to keep people happy, keep diversity in there. But there's also one external factor that made it tricky or made it not that clever to host a team game tournament this year, but next year. So right now, and I shouldn't say this, but I will say it.
This is still going to get cut.
Nili, I really want to release this as soon as possible. So only say it if you can say it.
I'm heavily considering early Q3 to have a team game tournament.
LAN?
And a
Team game LAN?
one. That's I said team game tournament, right? I think next year a team game tournament makes more sense than this year. And in the future, people will know why.
People understand. Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Okay. So let's put aside what you just said. Is there a tournament, a team game setting that you can see yourself wanting to sponsor? Is there a team game setting that you see actually succeeding?
Naturally, Nations Cup provides the best viewer numbers, right? So that would be very natural to sponsor. I think honestly, if Rage Forest was like a 2-week tournament, it might have gotten sponsorship as well, right? Just to have like a refreshing thing in between. But Rage Forest obviously takes up like at least 4 or 5 weeks, I would say. So Cartographers was such an easy like squeeze in to give some flavor into the summer, and that's very different to Rage Forest.
But since you brought up the length there, a Nations Cup would definitely need at least that amount of time as well.
Yeah, I would think like 6 weeks or something is the minimum for a Nations Cup, or like a good amount, I would think. Yeah.
So I'd like to move on to Cartographers 2. Spoilers, we're going to talk about Cartographers 2 that just finished yesterday. The final was played between Gamer Legion A, that's Hera and Doubt, and LYA, which was represented by Lix and Yo. Gamer Legion A wins the tournament pretty easily, I might say. Perhaps even surprisingly so, with a 5-1 final score. Nili, did you get to see it? Did you get to see the finals a little bit of the tournament?
I typically catch up like Mondays with finals or like games from the weekends, and since we were recording early Monday morning, I couldn't catch up yet.
Okay, you just heard the final results. Does that sound surprising to you?
If it was a 50k, no. With a 15k, yes, because I think they didn't train a lot. That I would be surprised if they like actively like took a lot of time to put thought into drafting and preparing the maps. So I thought this could be a tournament where LY could have easily won. And I think a lot of like A-tier teams had great performances, Tag, for example, because I think they trained and they prepared.
Mm-hmm. I think for team games specifically, preparing still does a lot for your team, especially because you know that the big guys usually don't take it as seriously. Now, Orion, there was another kind of Gamer Legion team in the tournament.
Kind of.
Can we actually put the blame on Tata for that one? Because you did win the tournament with Jordan, now that Tata was in the team.
It goes without saying, right? When reigning champions add another factor to their team and suddenly they're losing like round of 16. I mean, I don't want to point fingers or point the blame anywhere, you know. But I mean, it's there for everyone to see, right? What can we do? It's so obvious. Like
what does Niemann say? Chess speaks for itself. Age of Empires speaks for itself.
No, we cannot blame Tattle to be in like real talk. No, I think Tag they had a better approach, and like I think in hindsight, looking at the games, is like me and Tattle made so many mistakes that we know as well are mistakes. We have learned that lesson many times in the past. Yet still, we went for the wrong approach on multiple maps, and I think Tag honestly they seemed like very good, well prepared, and they seemed like they had very good approach on most maps. So I think they did a really good job, to be honest. I was surprised to see how clear they lost the next round after us, so that's a bit sad. But
you were hoping for a closer series there.
Yeah, I also think though, like I think you underestimate how much preparation Doubt and Hera did. I don't think they trained as in played games, but I think they spent quite some time talking about the maps and discussing how they want to approach the draft and such. At least that's the impression I got or feel. The only sad thing now is the banter from Doubt is going to be unreal. I'm glad I'm going for a 1-month vacation. I don't want to be around for the next couple of weeks.
He won't forget. He will save everything.
I know, that's the issue.
He was actually calling for a post-match talk about the tournament, which unfortunately won't be able to do because Viper is going to go away. He was actually calling for it. I got a tag in the GL intern server, which never happens, asking when is it going to be recorded. Guys, I was very surprised to see so much slinging. I don't think this rule for what was the rule again? 50% tax, I believe, before coinage. That in the past, if I remember correctly, seems to have sort of kept things in check a little bit. And people chose not to use sling as much. In this tournament, a lot of slinging was used. And I guess just to make sure, if folks are not too familiar with the vernacular of Age of Empires 2, slinging is basically you give your ally resources, which helps them, get ahead. What do you make of it, Nili? People are rediscovering the power of slinging?
I think in the past we just banned it so hard, right? Like tournaments, I think SY Nations Cup had no sling before imp, right? So simply like by the rules it was cut out. And I think 50% is kind of the sweet spot where it feels like, okay, we don't see it every game, but it is a viable strategy. And I think that's kind of perfect.
I'm not like I've never been a fan of slinging because I prefer to see more players and more armies on the field, and I think that's more fun to watch. And had like I was able to watch a little bit of the final yesterday. I think 2 games partly, and both games had sling involved, and in both games the slinging team won. I think it has a lot to do with the maps and the fact there's 2v2, right? 2v2 is often viewed as 1-2-1v1s, right? But in this case, when there's like water involved and hybrid maps and a lot of shenanigans included in the maps, there's also the very quick scenario of, okay, this guy's put in a position where if he tries to play his 1v1 or continue to play the game, he's just behind. So then it might be better for him to just sling. And in this case, when you have a strong player and then a very weak player in the winning team, it also makes sense for the very, very weak player to sling the strong player. So there's also those scenarios. But no, I think 50% tax, you feel like it should. To be fair, in the game I saw where it worked, one of the games, it should not have worked. I think it was a misplay on LY's side. So I think 50% is kind of the sweet spot. It cannot be lower, higher. I'm not sure which way to put it.
Well, the tax would have to be higher, yeah.
Would have to be higher for it to be less. But again, I'm not a fan of sling. I prefer the rules when it's like you cannot sling until imp, for example, because I want to see more armies. I want to see more players play and express themselves. Mm-hmm. This is also why people hated sling in the past. One guy would just fully wall himself, and his whole purpose, the whole game, is send resources. So you're essentially taking away a player and a player's ability to show himself in the game, and the civilization and their units as well.
I think in 2v2 tournaments, where typically teams are formed with 2 equally strong players, it is less of a problem than, for example, let's say 4v4 Nations Cup, where there might be like 3 star players and 1 inexperienced player that slings every game, right? That's a horrible scenario, and I would not like to see that. But in 2v2, if it's like a strategic option and let's say 15% of games are slinging, I'm fine with that.
Mm-hmm. There's a case that Nili brought up now, Nations Cup, right? If we're to say Norway as an example, okay, we have me, MBL, Keller behind us, and then like the next level is a significant drop. So if we were to play a 4v4, our best approach or strategy would probably be to somehow get that 4th player to sling. Mm-hmm. So it gives lower teams potentially a better competitive chance. But at the same time, I've also said this as well, since the Tyrant days, when you have opened the door for slinging, we had Cab slinging me in Tyrant back in the glory days of me.
It fits into the description of the weaker player. I know you don't consider him the weaker player. Right? I know that.
But the point is, the best teams can also sling, and they will still do a sling better than a worse team.
Right. I mean, I think back to the Nations Cup that Nili was just talking about. I did organize 2 of them. I very clearly remember this one game between Brazil and Argentina. And the Argentinian team, I think they were the guys who started slinging like heavily, like every single game. And then people started imitating them. And there was this game, it was kind of a Socotra map in the sense that people are concentrated in the middle of the map. I mean, the whole map is available, but people were concentrated in the middle.
Is it El Dorado?
It was, I want to say it was Seize the Hump, where the TC started in the middle, but I'm not 100% sure. In any case, triple sling the Aztecs. Again, this was before we started using the Wololo Kingdoms. 3 players sling the Aztecs. Aztecs with Eagle Warriors. Back in the day, was really hard to counter when it's Elite Eagle Warrior in Imperial Age. Easy win. And everybody's like, amazing strat. It's not really difficult. You make a couple of Eagles, you're getting slain all the time. You get to 150 of them, the game is over. Now, I did hear Doubt and Harris say that they also agree that slinging is not overpowered. They think it's just an extra strategy that kind of breaks the meta of the scouts and archers.
That's a bit flawed because the scout archer maps aren't the one where we see slinging.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think we have seen that in Arabia, for example, as well, or those types of maps. But yeah, like where I saw slinging yesterday was Baltic. and one more map that I don't remember. But
yeah, that was saying on water maps might be broken.
yeah, exactly. Like on those maps where it's like you have switched your attention on water, on land, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Slinging there becomes incredibly overpowered because you just skyrocket one of your ally into the next stage while the others are still. It's very hard to get to the next stage quickly when you're having such a spread variety of strategies. And yeah, like a sling there is insane.
Okay, so you can't have 50% sling for land units, 70% sling for water maps. So what's the solution there?
I think the solution is that each tournament has to figure out what they want in their tournament.
Do we want Baltic in a tournament? Question.
Well, it was a T-West tournament, so are you surprised?
You're gonna get
Should
Baltic.
T-West get sponsorship in the future?
That's a good question.
Like, as I said, I don't mind having part of slinging. And I don't know, like, we would need to look into statistics. And like, typically the maps that always reproduce slinging, for example, Gold Rush in the old days, those maps should probably not be considered. And there need to be other options. Like the micromanagement weird scenario would be you actually like say, okay, on this map you're only allowed to sling it in. On this map you're allowed to sling in whatever age.
Which
it
would
feels
lead
really
to
wrong though.
Good luck,
Yeah.
admins.
Yeah.
I think one thing could be like if we agree that slinging is like, I mean, again, it's up to each tournament, in my opinion. Obviously, everyone will have a different opinion here, but I think hiding sling behind a tech could be a good choice as well. Because in this case, we had you just build a market and you bam, 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 send the resources, right? But maybe if you have to research something as well on top of that, but I mean, yeah, each their own.
Coinage. You can only sling after coinage. But then it's
But then again, do you put coinage to cast layers or is it in few layers? Like again, it's always everyone has to make their own decision in tournament host or a unified handbook that demands slinging rules.
Well, it's one has been released. One has been officially. Does it cover slinging, Nili? By the way,
It actually does with the rule.
Wow.
Slinging is complicated. Every tournament has to decide on its own.
Okay, well,
Because, like, yeah, maybe you give the introduction to the handbook and then we can go into detail.
no. Well, feel free. Again, unfortunately I had no time to read all of these. Usually, I'd come here and be prepared and have read all of this. Unfortunately, I didn't have the time. So you go ahead.
Okay, so in the past, and the past being the last 25 years of tournaments, rules were always tricky, right? And every tournament had their own rules. Admins viewed rules differently. Tournament hosts viewed them differently. Players viewed them differently. So it was long overdue to have like a unified handbook. And now the big question, like, who is making that one, right? Okay, yeah, I can lead this. Then we invited the big tournament hosts, some relevant admins, and some people that could give some insight. For example, I had like Robo there, Krasini there, and like experienced people out of the community, right? And then we also had a problem in the past that players had a lot of problems with tournaments, and the only option for them to voice their concerns was like in either Discords where it's getting flooded, in like private Discord channels for the tournaments, or a tweet about it, right? And that always stirs drama. So what I did roughly like 11 months ago now is I founded a players council for the top 45 players roughly. And there we had some players representatives that collecting information from all the players, and they are talking to me. And therefore, or with that, I'm trying to basically get an idea what players want right now. And those player representatives also were invited into the handbook meeting. Then we have a meeting with like 25 people, and I tried to organize it as good as possible. It was a bit chaotic, and I think we will get better in the future. It was like a 4-hour meeting with a lot of people having a lot of opinions. And in the end, we had a handbook. And obviously, all sides are always unhappy, but I also think we had a lot of good thing going into it. The plan now is to have a half-yearly meeting with exactly the similar group or like some changes, like some tournament hosts fading out, some new coming in, and discuss the rules again. I already made a long list of stuff that's suboptimal in the handbook that we have right now, and some changes that we want to have. So that's a big meeting coming up in like 4 weeks. And there we discuss, okay, what can we change in the future?
What kinds of things would lead to discussions there? Because I kind of assume that people would largely agree. Okay, yeah, I'm dying to hear. I just assume that people would largely be in agreement when it comes to the broad strokes, at least.
Okay.
You go ahead. You go ahead, Viper.
No, I'm just listening. Sorry. Oh, I wasn't muted. Oh, sorry. I mean, I was in that meeting I wasn't there during the whole meeting. But I mean, like, there will be the most basic things that people just have disagreements on, and like in one tournament, it will be they wanted this in this way, and the players agree to that. But in another tournament, they maybe want this rather, and then it's like then suddenly those tournament hosts also clash a little bit.
But what exactly is it? Like timeline? What exactly?
Behind
Sling
closed
rules?
doors, we cannot.
Oh, is it?
Leak it.
Okay, we can't leak that shit.
I
Okay,
mean,
well.
you can probably talk about some of those things, but
Yeah, I can just give you the topics.
Yeah.
So, for example, one thing: stand ground patrol. How do we want to handle that, right? Do we want to ban it? Do we want to allow it?
Who'd be against that? Who'd be against
no,
banning
it's not
that?
about against it. It's about how to deal with it. There's like 17 different ways of dealing with it.
How do we define the rule exactly, right? And wording has to be precise there. And if someone does it, what are we doing? Game loss, set loss, disqualification, right? That's something we have to discuss. And if you try to discuss that with 25 people, it's not easy.
And it took like 20
Nili,
minutes to define it as well.
Yeah.
Nili, I need to cover this shit, bro. Next time you need to invite me to that thing. I'll be the on-site reporter. I won't leak any shit.
You need more people there.
Yeah.
You don't need more people.
Okay.
Well, I wouldn't be talking. Just right.
Time in between games, right? How long does a player? How long are they allowed to take? What are exclusions? Like when could they take more time? How long can they take between finishing the draft and jumping into game number one? Right, long thing. Player POV streaming. Players would like to stream their POV more. Tournament hosts obviously don't like that. Then seeding method, 1v1s in team game tournaments. Free scheduling versus set times. Free scheduling, better for players. Set times, way better for viewer numbers.
Yeah, okay, I see. I see the discussions erupting in my mind. I see them now.
Long, right?
Mm-hmm.
A big topic
totally
was, let's assume there are 4 sets in a day. The first set is being played. Do all the other players have to be available at all times to instantly start? Because we had sets in the past where it's like 2-0 and suddenly it's 3-2 and players had to wait like 3 hours because it was a big team game tournament and they're already drafted, they're getting exhausted. What are we doing there, right? It is far away from a final product, but I think it is a great start. And I think within even the next meeting, I think people will be really happy with like 98% of what's in there. It gives structure. It makes it so much easier for inexperienced tournament hosts to just say, okay, we take everything from this. By the way, this is the timeline of the tournament. Those are the draft links. And suddenly players only need to read one single page and they know every single rule and have all the information. And that's just so much better because in the past we had like Red Bull Wololo Handbook is like 60 pages long. Obviously, it includes all games as well, but it's so tough to find. And then getting punished because you picked the wrong color. Like it was in the rules. Players should read the rules, but it is tricky. And I think it will be overwhelming now, but I think it's a great tool for the future as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Before we close the Cartographers chapter, I just want to give a quick shout out to the Silver League, where our good friend T90 almost made it. He lost in the final 3-2. So he was playing together with Dark. He lost against VNAA. Does this give you, because you and T90, there's a bit of a rivalry in terms of you guys playing. You were always sort of, well, I was going to say you were sort of the same level. I don't think you're going to agree to that. But does this give you wow, man, I wish I could still play as well?
Yeah. Like I'd like to compete still. And I wanted to sign up for TTL Community League, but couldn't do the final 2 weeks because I was traveling. And I also wanted to do Warlords Community League, but couldn't do because I was traveling for the finals as well, or like the end phases. But it's obviously itching. I'm still playing like Mondays. I'm mainly playing with like Team Germany, like we're doing team games.
Cool.
And that's really nice. Yeah, I still love the game. I still love competing, and it's tough to see T90 being in finals.
So prepare yourself for that Nations Cup, which we still don't know if it's going to go. Hey, by the way, if someone else sponsors a Nations Cup, not Microsoft, you'd be allowed to play in it, right?
Correct. SY Nations Cup I could have played, yeah. But I'm obviously far away from being top 5 Germany right now.
Interesting.
Yeah. Like
Okay, who are we talking ahead? Running, Jordan,
Anotov is the best.
Target,
Anatov.
Target, I don't know.
Terz is a great flank.
Well, gotta practice more.
Philip is a great flank, for example.
Forest player.
And like he's very experienced. Like he can grind stuff out. And like Anotov is a crazy brain and like develops BOs for every stiff, for every map. And Philip is just an executor, for example, right? And then his Arabia flank has gotten so crazy good over the last 3 years. So I could not compete with that.
All right, watch out for Team Deutschland next Nations Cup. I'd be looking for it. Okay, so I'd like to move on to the Medieval Masters and sort of the lack of promotion for the tournament, which we've discussed a little bit before. But first, just the basics of the tournament. The tournament is now officially started. That's a 1v1 tournament organized by Mario Alvage. $10,000 prize pool with a format kind of similar to Warlords 4. That's 4 groups of 4 players into an 8-player single elimination bracket. They did the thing with the tiebreakers that people are calling for, where the game difference is above head-to-head, which caused a lot of headaches for the administration of the Warlords 4. The final is scheduled for July 6th, and I'll put a link below in the description box so you guys can check who the players are. Notable absences would be Viper and Doubt. I think you guys are both traveling. So, first of all, Nili, I think it's a great thing you're giving Mario's not a new content creator, but I think it's the first time he's getting sponsorship from Microsoft. I think that's awesome. I think that's great. What made the tournament for Mario appealing to you?
He's super flexible in the sense like, just give me 2 weeks and I will do them whatever. That makes it obviously my life way easier, right? And just squeeze him in, like for example now, and I moved it like 3 or 4 times because there were different stuff happening and now it ended up in this calendar spot. That made it easy. Plus, he's a big supporter of the scene for like 10, 12 years now. Like he is crazy. And he has like one of the like that we don't know of, or most people don't know of in the English-speaking scene, craziest YouTube channels, right? How many subscribers?
270,000 or something. Very big.
That's massive. And like an upload with like 25,000 views a day, roughly, it might be less. And it just felt like he is doing so much for the scene for so many years, and a bit of a thank you and an appreciation. And only taking away 2 weeks with really a lot of flexibility made it very easy for me to give him the tournament.
I mean, it's a proper thing, because if we look into next year, there's already a Medieval Masters 2.
Yeah,
so
I had a note here because, aren't you afraid they're already awarding sponsorship for the next tournament without seeing how the first one turns out to be?
Well, it's tricky with planning, right? And I thought about this as well. But if I tell him, let's see how the first one goes, and then decide if you get another one, then it's basically a 2-year gap of him not getting any tournaments.
I see.
But so what you're saying as well is that the whole budget is allocated. There is no chance anything else World's Edge sponsored would be dropped into the calendar.
There are chances like of additions and edits. So this is not necessarily final, no.
Okay, but wouldn't that then be like we could see how Medieval Masters 1 does, and then we could potentially sneak in Medieval Masters 2, just keep that calendar slot open temporarily?
We could, and I considered that for some tournaments. It's just, I think if it heavily underperforms and we need to have a talk, then we have a talk. Okay. And if it's getting scratched because only 8 people tuned in, then we will make adjustments. Yeah.
As a player, I way prefer to just have it there anyway, right? Even if it gets scratched later, then okay. But at least like right now, seeing that there's a Medieval Master 2 coming as well is already great news for everyone.
Okay, so one big talking point here about this tournament, Nili, as we just implied before, is the lack or the perceived lack of promotion for the tournament. A lot of people didn't know it was happening. I think initially they had 38 signups for the tournament. They had to extend it a little bit. How do you see that?
It is, I think, a tournament that we very rarely do, in the sense that the qualifiers is overlapping with another World Edge sponsored tournament, right? Typically, it's like tournament ends, qualifier starts, next tournament starts, right? And this one was like, okay, the goal was not to take any spotlights away from cartographers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even like the initial plan was to have all the players have the games played privately and no games being cast during cartographers at all, because that was my initial vision, right? But then players obviously felt like, okay, yeah, we want to stream our games, so we opened that, tried to avoid scheduled cartographers times. Also, lack of promotion. I think I slipped up a bit because I was so busy with the tournament handbook, and language barrier is a bit of a problem there for Mario, right? He's extremely present in the Spanish speaking community. I think his Discord has like 8,000 or 10,000 people where he's promoting the event. He has the massive YouTube channel, but that's not really something that's coming over here, right? Also, warning, the LY Cup will have very bad promotion in the Western scene as well. So that will be very, very similar, right? That's mainly a tournament for the Mandarin speaking scene, while Medieval Masters is kind of a tournament for the Spanish speaking scene.
Mm-hmm.
After I realized, damn, okay, the promotion is not going there, and like the handbook wasn't up to par, and lots of stuff is not going very, very great, I made a direct contact with this admin, and I think a lot of stuff improved within a week, where like rules were changed, we made a lot of adjustments, and they were very open to providing the best that they could. It just came a lot due to not having a lot of experience and me not having enough of an eye on there. And yeah, I think I could have done a bit better.
I still see the tournament with big numbers in my head because, again, YouTube, the way it works is if you build the tournament, it's a big channel, it's a very big channel. And the way YouTube works is that if you start building the tournament early enough, in terms of streaming all the games, the viewership tends to go up every single day. That's the way I've seen it happen for the Gamer Legion channel, for example, during NAC and all of that. So, guys, one thing I was very surprised to see. So last episode, we talked a little bit about tournament viewership. And I was basically talking only about Warlords 4, which had a slightly lower viewership than Warlords 3. And in my head, that wasn't a big deal. I thought we're just going to mention it and move on. But a lot of comments in the section were like, well, it's obvious that's going to be the case. There are just too many tournaments. One finishes, the next one starts, and they're all the same. The same guy wins all the time. There's just not enough variety. I wonder what you guys feel about that. One thing I will say is that I think it's accurate that in the past, there was a lot more experimentation going on with the tournaments. When you think about when Hidden Cup first came, when you think about Nili's apartment cup flying over players to your apartment, I don't see that kind of thing anymore. Though, it's obviously important to say that now you're getting $50,000 from Microsoft. You're getting $100,000 from Microsoft. So it's also understandable that you're trying to stick to something that you know works. So how do you see this, Nili?
I try to create the calendar to have a bit of variety, right? We have a LAN into like a small hyper random tournament, into another LAN, into like a completely different tournament. So I think the repetitiveness feeling of tournaments should decrease a bit, I would think. Also, if we have too many tournaments, let's assume option A is we have a tournament with 100% viewership, or we have two tournaments with 80% viewership. For us, it's way better to have two tournaments with 80%, right?
Right.
So it's we might not get the peak compared to, okay, we have one world championship a year and everyone is playing for it for 11 months and everyone has to tune in for this one weekend and we can break 100K. But the year itself will be slower that way.
Mm-hmm. Viewer exhaustion, Orion, do you see it?
Before I answer that, who made the thumbnail and title for the last video?
Well, no clue. Absolutely no clue. What does
also, just want to say...
I just hand it over and...
At the start of your sentence to the question, you said, in your mind, it was not a big deal. And then I see thumbnail and title of the last video, and okay, whatever.
Well, again, it doesn't have to be the same person doing
no,
both
I'm just
things,
saying, okay. No, I mean... It's weird, but I'm not an avid Age of Empires watcher, right? I play the game a lot, I compete a lot, I love that. But I don't sit down and watch tournaments for hours and hours. So I don't ever feel that, the watching exhaustion. So for me, it's very hard to comment on that. I don't know how it's like to just watch these tournaments over and over again. And like I wouldn't sit and watch the whole weekend of Warlords or this. I would tune in for specific sets or games. So I would not feel that personally. I could imagine that if I was watching nonstop, Red Bull as well, for example, or any tournaments that like Warlords lasted, I'm not sure how long the main event was, but like you have same maps kind of going on day after day. I could see that becoming an issue. But then again, after Warlords, there's always some twist in a different tournament afterwards. So I don't know if there is viewer exhausting, not because of the maps, but maybe there's too many events that people are feeling, at least someone. But then again, you don't have to watch every event, right? I think it's way better to have the viewership and the options there rather than just, okay, just so you guys have a little bit more appetite in a month. We're not going to have anything for a month. I don't think that makes sense either. So
yeah, I think that's exactly where I am. Of course, if you look at the individual viewer, if you're watching Age of Empires 2 all the time, at some point you're exhausted. But if you think what's better for the game, I think having content is better than not having content. Even if the one piece of content is not having the maximum viewership, just the simple fact you get more people showing content more often. That means you give more people the chance, to come to know the game and enjoy it, hopefully.
Yeah. And another big thing there is like, okay, you're tired of watching Hera win a tournament, right? But a tournament is not only Hera or Leary or me or Doubt or Tad or whatever. There's the round of 16, round of 32, round of 64. There's qualifiers. There's so many people that want to play and compete at that level as well. That want to make the next step. And those, if you lose in the round of 64, round of 128 in a qualifier, suddenly there's a month until your next opportunity to compete or play. So the gaps also, if there was even a bigger gap between tournaments, the gap for those players as well would be even bigger.
And to be fair, those parts of the tournaments have been incredibly exciting recently. I want to say, a round of 16s, even semifinals, very, very close games. Lots of new faces, I want to say. Now, one tournament, some guy, starts breaking out and all that. So that's
TTF Gold was so good.
Lots of surprising names there too, yeah. I think that's where I am too. Though I understand, of course, for the individual viewer, it might feel like a little bit too much. But yeah, just skip a tournament. I don't think it's that big of a deal. So just to finish this part here, Nili, tournament viewership, the numbers we have currently do not worry you, or do they?
I think it's a lot of out of control stuff, right? For example, the Garrison had crazy viewer numbers, especially for one-time hosting, but it was a 5-4 finals, Leary 4-3, right? Viper Hera final will always be higher than Yo Hera final, right? Going into the last game is so much better. So, like, only looking at peaks, we don't have enough sample size to make any reasonable conclusions there. So I think it makes more sense to take a look, okay, what are the viewer numbers in the quarterfinal where everyone is playing? And that's consistently on like Friday or Saturday or something. And I think those might be actually telling a better story.
A better idea. That's a very interesting point. Very interesting point. I mean, unfortunately, we, the public, we don't have access to like hours watch and all of that, which I think would be a better picture. We would give a better picture. Okay, so I had in my notes, Nili, that we wanted to talk a little bit about pathing, and my hope was that you were going to be able to show us a clip because you've been hyping up the, some patch that at some point in time might be coming. You said, unfortunately, you cannot do that, and that's totally understandable, of course, but is there a few words you can spare for pathing? How confident are you that it's really going to be much better?
Oh, I'm I'm very confident it's way better, right? So basically, I'm playing twice a week with like the Forgotten Empires crew with like the new and improved pathing, and once a week I'm playing with like the live game that you are playing, right, with the Team Germany, and it feels very, very different, and we are, I think, pretty happy with the progress that we have made. Now the problem, like from what I learned over the last 12 months, right? It's very easy to now overshare and give you dates and give you what's coming and stuff. And that's something that I did a lot like last July, August when I started. And if you promise 10 things and only 8 things are happening, people get really angry at you for not delivering for what you said. So something that I really learned now in my time is just don't overpromise, or like not only overpromise, just don't promise anything. Don't give out dates. Don't give us exact stuff although I would really like to share and would really like to like, because I'm already excited for what's coming, right? And I think community reception will be overwhelmingly positive because we are so happy with what's happening behind the scenes. But it's tricky for me to go into any details, just in the small case that something is not being delivered in the end.
Okay, can you give like a very broad this year?
I don't want to say.
Not even that. Okay,
This
fair enough.
millennia?
This millennium. Have you had a crack at it, Orion? The new pathing? I don't know if you can reveal this. No. Okay.
No, we're only testing that internally.
Right. That's a very tightly held secret. I like it.
I can maybe talk a bit about the process, right? That's happening. That's already an insight that's pretty interesting for some people. So what I basically did is I collected hundreds and hundreds of people having bad pathing, right? Viper clips sending in. Then I collect the recorded game and we create a massive list of bugs for it, right? Then I'm basically together with Trirem, that might some of you might know.
Worked on Wallow Kingdoms.
Yeah, crazy brain, right? And we are trying to prioritize, okay, what's the most important thing? What is like, for example, regrouping is absolutely horrible, right? So we knew, okay, if you send a crossbow in one direction and they dance around and move in the other direction, that's not pretty, right? So that obviously gets high priority. And then there's stuff, for example, let's assume teleporting from ram to ram, right? Yeah, it's ugly and it looks pretty bad, but it's not really
that big of a
affecting,
deal, right?
It's not affecting our like daily game, right? So that gets a bit of a lower priority. So now we have an endless list of like dozens and dozens, or in the end, like accumulated hundreds of bugs. Then engineers are trying to go through it, fixing them. Then they get implemented in our daily testing. And then we try to test them and confirm, okay, that is actually being fixed. Okay, now this is fixed. Let's see what's next highest priority. Let's try to fix that. And that's basically the process for the last 7 months now.
Okay, Nili, it was on July 4th that you announced you're going to start working for Microsoft again. July 4th of last year, of course. So it's now been 1 year. So are you enjoying the ride so far? How's it been?
Let's dissect a bit, right? When we talk of Microsoft, like that's the idea of what everything is. So basically, the sub company from Microsoft, the World's Edge, is basically overlooking all the games, right? Then there's Forgotten Empires that brought out most of the expansions. Then there's Capture Age that brought out Battle for Greece, for example. My role when it comes to tournaments and like the Handbook is at World's Edge. And then I found a lot of work at Forgotten Empires, right? For example, like looking into pathfinding, looking into balancing, right? Just as a general idea of what's happening. For me personally, I struggled a lot at the start with corporate structures, right? What did I do before in my life? I was a professional poker player. I was a professional streamer. I was a teacher, basically responsible for what happens in those 45 minutes.
GLT member.
GLT member, no control over anything. And suddenly, for example, pathfinding calendar, right? Not pathfinding calendar, tournament calendar reveal. It was like everything set up, and I needed 3 signatures, right? 3 people saying, yeah, do that. 1 person power outage in Seattle, 1 person holidays, 1 person sick. I tried again another week. Oh, let's ask this person as well. Changes, going through the loop again. And like this, like those, it felt like I felt a bit like handcuffed of the corporate structure, right? And I was really frustrated at the start. I have to say. And it was really like, is this worth it? Like, am I getting enough done with my time? And I heavily gained more understanding on why things from the outside sometimes feel like people are not listening, people are not getting anything done. But actually behind the scenes, more stuff is happening, and like steps are often there for a reason, right? And that understanding was really hard for me to process. But now I think I got a bit more corporate, Nili, and I think I fit into those structures a bit more. And like now people are happy that I'm not skipping lines when asking for permission, and like getting stuff done in a more structured ways, which theoretically is not something like super productive, but not super productive, but it just takes longer to get stuff done.
That's frustrating, right? When you're used to
yeah.
just doing it. You have the idea, you execute it, that's it.
Old NAC days, like, okay, there's something we didn't think of, something needs to get fixed. Overlay guy and I didn't sleep for 2 days, stuff was fixed, right? And that's how I envisioned working, like getting stuff done quickly, but that's not a thing. And also, one major thing that's tough for me is, although I'm basically working 40 hours a week, only thinking about Age of Empires, I'm disconnected a bit more from the scene, right? For example, I'm still very good friends with like the old GL squad.
Huh?
But we are in a call with 5 people, and basically I can't say anything, right? They are discussing tournaments. Oh, Nili, what about Hidden Cup? Oh, Nili, what about Red Bull? And I heard rumors here. Nili. And I'm just like I can't, right? People are saying something on Reddit, and I felt like, okay, this, like, you have one problem. It's one tiny thing. You just need one realization, and everything, you won't be as mad. But I can't share that. Mm-hmm. And so that's a bit of a disconnect feeling. For example, when I'm streaming, I'd have to ignore 30% of the questions, right? And like, that's basically, they see me as the role that could give them all the knowledge and could help them. And simply because of my role, I can't do that. And that hurts a bit. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm basically fighting the good fight, but I can't really always show it.
You could reap the rewards of it. That's funny. Well, okay, so that was an awesome description of what you're doing, and thank you so much for sharing so much, but I didn't hear an answer to the question, are you enjoying it?
Okay. Often, very often. There are a lot of stuff that are really, like, I like the people that I work with, which is obviously something you can't really choose, and that's really nice. And tournament work is something that I like. Structuring stuff is really nice, like the tournament handbook and stuff. And often, even when I'm not working, I'm thinking about stuff. What can I optimize? What can we do? Yeah. The only thing is like corporate structure that's still not enjoyable. But overall, I'm enjoying it, yeah.
We, the GL boys, also miss Nili's hot takes. Now he's way more quiet when we speculate.
Yeah. For example, I shared something like Viper and I had a car ride. We went to a private event, like the chess event. I shared something with Viper. He talked to the boys talked to someone else, and suddenly, like, so many people know about something that I should not have said. Like, no damage was done, but still.
What was it? If it's gone now,
in my defense, I wasn't told to not talk to my friends about it. So
maybe.
I would never have shared it if Nili was like, by the way, don't say
now you can
anything.
say what it was. What was it?
No. It's still not public.
It's still not public. Wow. Okay. Man, so many fucking secrets. I feel so left out here.
But I got way more careful there now, right? And
you're welcome.
Viper taught me.
That's why you did it. That's why you did it.
Yeah. And that's obviously tough. I remember U-Time Nelson, like you messaged me, for example, Nili, you are now part of pathfinding, like, and then you asked like 5 questions, and I was like, we could do an hour podcast of what's happened, because I had like an hour talk with like what I viewed like the 7 or 8 most important people that worked on pathfinding in the past, and I learned so much on what went wrong there in the past, right? But that's like impossible for me to ever really discuss. Yeah.
Do you know anything about Scripter, Nili?
Ooh. I heard your last episode. I also heard different rumors, but most of them, I'm pretty sure that at one point World's Edge tried to contact them and work for World's Edge.
So they know. Man, I need to find the guy who knows him. I need to find...
Might just be reaching out through Woobly message. I'm not sure if they know that much.
Interesting. Even for the guy is such a secretive guy. You need to go through Woobly, imagine.
But I can also say that it is one of the craziest scripters to be in the scene, and that they're like extremely talented, and like I think they reverse engineered the machine code of the game to edit stuff. And I'm not really sure what that means in the complexity, but even like full-time IT people said that like they are far away from doing what Scripter could.
I was talking about the guy who ran Voobly. What was his name again? Elusive,
yeah.
Elusive, right. So I think both those guys are like crazy coders, and when they combined efforts, we got spectator mode for Voobly. That was both those guys working together.
Didn't Scripter also improve like networking code and all kinds of crazy?
NAT,
like, it's insane.
Yes. And pathing. I mean, you guys remember there was a huge lag, like command lag. You would click a unit, it would take ages to register. Scripter got rid of that too for 1v1 games only. Well, maybe Scripter at some point makes a comeback. Nili, this was so much fun, dude. It was so much info, so much insights, such fun doing this with you. Always a pleasure having you here. Thank you so very much for taking the time.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a pleasure for me as well. It's tricky for me. Like I got an invitation like 2 weeks ago, and I think most of the questions I actually went through like 3 or 4 times in my head. Because it's like so tough. Like, okay, they're asking me this question. Okay, this is what I would want to say. This is what my people that I work with don't want me to say. And then I obviously like want to give the community something. So this is tricky, and I already know that some stuff that I said you actually misunderstood already, but let's just air it and
let's see what happens. Okay, I think this is also going to be the last episode for you, Viper. Yeah, no, not forever, but you're going to go on a vacation, so I wish you a happy time. I
thought we came full circle. This was the last one, no?
No, it's not. I hope not quite. But I think you're running away from the heat, which I understand. It's 35 degrees yesterday over here, at least.
Yeah, it was brutal.
Even for me, it's brutal. So, I wish you.
Are you gonna do episodes and have a special replacement, or?
I don't know. I actually don't know.
You need a co-host.
Oh, okay. Are you offering yourself, Nili?
Depends on who we have on.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll discuss that in private. So you don't have anything opposed to it, do you, Viper? That we replace you for someone else?
I mean, like, as long as it's not T90 again, because I want the quality of the show to remain high.
You don't want it to go down, yeah.
No, yeah, of course. Then I have something to watch on vacation.
Oh, there you go. Guys, this was a lot of fun. Thank you to both of you as always. And if you enjoyed the podcast, you know what you have to do. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that. And as you could tell, we're not quite sure when we're going to be back, but we will be back. So see you soon.